Hail Internet! It's Paul, it's Matt, the Dork Lords. Today, we're talking about episode 2 of The Penguin, Inside Man. We open with Sophia in a therapy session. She is dreaming that she's still in Arkham. We hear fellow inmates calling her Hangman. Her brother, Alberto, comes to visit her with a missing finger, cluing us in that this is a dream. But he is shot from behind by a shadowy figure. She wakes up frantically, and her therapist, Julian Rush, the guy who played Shades in Luke Cage,
yes,
holds her down until she calms down. There's this hypnotism angle with the red lights. He has a very personal, close contact to her. It makes me think there's something dicey about their relationship.
Yeah.
In any case. But he tells her she's safe. She corrects him, saying she's home, which is not a place of safety in her mind. We end with Oz successfully pinning the blame for the inside man on Castillo. Castillo is then executed by Sophia's uncle, Luca. Luca obviously wants Sophia out of the way, so he's arranged for her to take a trip to Italy. She's ushered out of the room. The door shuts her out, much like the ending of The Godfather.
Sure.
She's being removed from power. So, she is now determined to, as she puts it, force them to their knees. And to do this, she seems willing to team up with Oz.
Yes.
All that said, Paul,
yes,
what'd you think of episode 2?
I thought it was fine. I don't know. The show gives me many thoughts.
Okay.
One of them is that, boy, like they said in the first episode how Sophia was, opposed to Oz there. But by the end of this second episode, they're allied.
But,
so,
at least temporarily. But yes, okay.
Yes. So, there still could be, there obviously will be problems ahead. Yeah. Because, you had Oz's alibi suggesting that, she's not that hard, basically. Like, you're dangerous to her and her women are a concern for her. So, clearly they're setting that up for later on to be
Plus, there's
issue.
The mom, who he's, said is dead.
Yes.
But how hard would that be to check?
They seem to want a theme for the episodes, every episode to be like, oh, looks like Oz's gonna get killed finally. Like, oh, they'll finally catch up to him, and then by the end he'll have squirmed out of it.
Yep.
Which, is one of my criticisms of this episode. I felt like Sophia was more formidable in the first episode, and this one she was kind of fooled rather quickly. I
agree that there's the intent that it appears that way. I just wonder if that's true. That's all. I agree with you that if it on the surface level, if she was duped that quickly and she went from I don't trust you at all to, you know what, I trust you enough that I'm going to confide in you my plans to take down my family. Okay.
I wasn't talking about that.
Oh, okay.
I was talking about who killed my brother? Oh, the guy was close to you. All she knows is, you were with him that night, so I'm just going to automatically, give me the gun. Is she's just going to be like, maybe she was going to be like, I will force it on you so you will see that I really want to know the truth. But, it didn't seem like she was willing to, she should have been like, let's go someplace else where I can really find out what happened.
Good point.
So this whole give me a gun, she should have been like, okay, let's move this to another room where, because maybe she probably wasn't going to just up and shoot him, although it just seemed like it.
It did seem like it. It did, because the idea was, I think the intent of that scene and the reason that Luca doesn't give her that power is he's like, look, you don't have power in this family. I'll do the executive decisions by executing the guy who needs executing. So yeah, it did come across as whether she was going to do it or not, I think Luca believed she would.
You could also look at it this way, though. Like, hey, I'm in power now, and that's the thing that I wanted. Who really cares about who killed this guy who was in charge before? I don't. So this wraps it up nicely.
Let's not bicker and argue about who killed who.
So so that's what I would say.
Okay.
And obviously for her, the bigger problem is the fact that the people in charge don't want her to be involved, and so it makes sense for her to because hey, at least Oz is saying the right stuff. Like, hey, you should be in charge.
Yeah, exactly. But you're right. Great point in that. In the beginning of this episode, she's like, look, there's an inside man. Obviously, this, and she's right.
Yeah.
And so she's still kind of like, I'm the perceptive one in this group. And then you're right, it does seem a little like she's very quick to be like, there's your pocket knife. Oh, and he had the thing. Boom. I mean, she doesn't even know about the jewels that were planted in his apartment or wherever until later. Like that hasn't even happened yet. So it's a good point. She was pretty quick to jump on the Kill Castillo bandwagon.
It was good though that we saw a little bit of her with the therapist and all that. We got a little bit more depth to what was going on with her. I liked the scenes where with her and her old friend who's like, oh wait, we should go to
yes, that's a great scene.
And then
Carla.
Stay away from my
yeah. So Carla is her cousin. Carla has obviously been instructed by Luca to go invite Sophia to Italy. She's like, oh, we should go to Italy. Remember that time? And then later Luca's like, you should go to Italy. Weren't you there before? Like, oh, okay. But yeah, so she's pretending to be all like, hey, cool cousin, da 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 da. But then as soon as her daughter walks up, there's that grip on her arm, like, oh my God, I'm introducing my daughter to a serial killer. And then the fact that Sophia picks up on that and is like, fine, I'll be what you want me to be. Be careful, you'll not survive in this family. Kind of like, okay. But yeah, no, that was actually maybe my favorite scene in this episode.
Wow, yeah, it was very good.
Yeah. Now, as for Sophia, so we learn that the hangman, that Sophia apparently killed 7 women.
Yes.
Then we've got these shots. We see this hypnotherapist. She has these vivid nightmares. She's clawing at her neck. She's sleeping in her closet. Obviously, in the comics, Sophia is, in fact, the hangman.
Yeah.
Here, she's been released from Arkham. No one thinks she's actually cured. Everybody talks about her behind her back. But we haven't seen her return to her serial killer ways. Like, she's violent, but she's not plotting her next serial killing.
Sure, yeah.
The reason I mention that is just to pose this possibility.
Yeah.
And then you can say, no, you're an idiot. Is it possible that in this reality, in the show, she didn't actually kill those women, that her dad framed her to save himself? And we're going to see flashbacks to Mark Strong as Carmine Falcone this season.
Right.
And so I feel like, and I'll talk about this a little later, but kind of like Oz and his mom, I think Sophia and her dad have a very dysfunctional relationship. I'm just throwing out the idea that maybe TV version of Sophia perhaps isn't actually the hangman. It didn't actually kill 7 people.
Certainly, I would be less interested if that was an aspect of her character. Like if she needed to go out and kill someone, I would find that less interesting. I'm presuming that that there's more to that story than she just needed to kill 7 people or whatever.
Right. And let's assume she did do the killings. Then there's the why these women, why 7 women in particular, why
it could be some some fact about them all that really played into something that helped the family or something, and so. Or maybe it was connected to her brother. We don't know yet. So I imagine that's going to happen because this nice, I'm sure they'll want to fill in about what actually led her to Arkham. So that'll be good to see.
Yeah. So her character's so interesting. I hear what you're saying, though. I'll say this. You're mentioning that it seemed like too quick a turn for her. That goes with maybe my one kind of little down point about this episode as well, which was the scenario with Irvad. I thought was a bit contrived. So he's going to he's going to wake up and he's going to give Oz away. He's the guy that's been,
Right.
And so Oz fairly easily arranges for him to be unguarded. There's no security cameras. No one notices Oz downstairs.
Right.
Irvad wakes up just at the right time.
Yeah.
Oz gruesomely stabs him to death.
Yeah.
Very bloody murder, but he easily wipes the blood away from his fingers. Like, wouldn't it be on his clothes? Like, there would be enough, I think, forensic evidence that if he walked back into the party and people were like, somebody killed Irvad, they would just look and see, who's the guy with blood specks all over him? So it all just felt a little forced, like, oh, here's a fun way we can get him out of this pickle. That felt a little too convenient. There were there were enough conveniences there, and maybe one of those conveniences I didn't think about but added on is that Sophia is pretty quick to go, yep, you're right, it's Castillo. So that was maybe one of their weaker Oz adapts scenarios.
Yeah, I mean, that's the danger with making it so that you're at a point where it's like, oh, are they going to get the penguin here? Is where, if it's that close, then it requires somebody to really fall for it, take the fall. And so he's got to do some clever plan to get out of it, which, it's just kind of a hard burden to put on a show.
Right, you're right. It almost seems impossible to keep that level of suspense and then believability up for when does that end? When, episode 6, episode 20, somewhere in there you gotta be like, okay, we gotta change the nature of this show. But
another thing about the show that I would say is I think they need to also bring more characters forward so that it's not just about Penguin and Sophia and Victor and his mom. I mean, I feel like it needs to be a richer world with more characters.
Well, we did get introduced to Sal Maroni's wife, Nadia. So that's the actress who played Avasarala in The Expanse.
Oh, yes.
And Sal obviously trusts her to kind of run the family business while he's in prison. I think she's an interesting addition.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I guess that whole family, because you put Clancy, in a cast, and you definitely want to use him.
Hell yeah.
So, if they bring more of that family forward.
Plus, I watched the little, behind the scenes at the end of the episode.
Yeah.
And it specifically mentioned how they're playing up the aspect that she's Iranian, and so her contacts, her family, are like the Persian mob, and so they're bringing in like a different culture into this Italian-based mob thing. So that was kind of interesting. So Johnny Vitti, the guy that Oz spent most of the time attempting to frame, and then finally was like, "Crap, I can't do it." He calls Oz Penguin. Early in the episode, and so I'll guess it just sounds like it's an insult based on his walk, his gait.
Yeah.
Is that why he's called Penguin in the comics, or I guess I always thought it had something to do with the fact that just the way he looks and he always wears a tux.
Yeah.
But is it based on his walk specifically in the comics?
No, because that would be difficult to show.
Right.
It's more like he's got this nose that's a beak. And, he's always wearing a tux and a top hat. It's less like, oh, everybody calls him the Penguin. It's more like, I'm the Penguin.
Yeah, it's not an insult. It's like,
because everybody's got to be somebody. And so he's the Penguin. And so, he has his penguin-like crimes and everything. Interesting
that during the double cross, one of the many double crosses, but the drug deal double cross, Oz uses a joke to distract his team and to kind of get into a safer position.
Oh yeah.
His joke was what's the difference between the government and the mafia? One of them's organized.
Yeah.
Anyway, it just felt like almost like a little Joker homage there. He's in the middle of his crime. He's like, let me tell you a joke. Anyway, just interesting that the Penguin is using jokes.
Sure.
We get this thing where Oz, returns to his mom. His mom was wandering the streets. By the way, I would hate to be that guy, the landlord who is being paid to look after her.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I mean, just the stakes. I mean, that guy's, if I thought that guy was a recurring character, I'd be like, that guy's going to get mad at big time. Every week it's a new guy. That's good. Who do we have today? So Oz uses, he dances with her to calm her down. So
yes.
Dances to a jazz record. He then attends Alberto's funeral, gets there late, and then he relays a story to Sophia that after his brothers, Jack and Benny, died, his mother couldn't get out of bed for weeks, so she suddenly got out of bed, dressed up, and took Oz out dancing at a jazz club.
Wow.
He says, we danced all night, and she says, you and your mom? And this adds fuel to suspicion from last week that maybe there's an Oedipal relationship between Oz and his mom. I mean, I feel like in episode 1 she called him like my young strong bull or something. It was a really weird way to talk about your kid.
Yeah. He
says here that it was the first time he'd heard live music. So I'm guessing that means he's fairly young. His brothers had just died. And it's odd that they went out dancing all night at a jazz club. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so I feel like there's an Oedipal relationship, but I'll also ask this question, which occurred to me, which kind of is almost like counteracts the first question. But did that event actually happen? His mom, like, he's just come from dancing with his mom to calm her down. She likes jazz music. That's a thing. But like 30 minutes later, because it's like, we got to get to the funeral. He has this perfect story to tell Sophia regarding her grief at losing a family member. Yeah. And it happens to be about dancing to jazz with his mom, which he just did. He also lies during that conversation where he's like, well, she's dead now, which doesn't have to do with the story. But I'm just saying, is it possible that he was trying to find a story that he thought would get him on the right side of things with Sophia, and so he just been dancing to jazz with his mom, so he brings out the story of like, oh yeah, after my kids died, or after my brothers died, we went out dancing. I don't know. It's hard to tell the only thing we know is that he's saying it. I'm not sure that we can believe that it's true.
Okay, maybe. I can't imagine a reason why he would make that story up. I mean, maybe if he needed a story, he made that up. But
okay, I mean, it does seem like the more likely Occam's razor.
Yeah,
it happened.
I feel like like he was just giving you the context. His character was giving the audience the context for the earlier dancing with his mom thing. So
I just thought because it came so close to the dancing that it.
And you haven't mentioned, but at the end of it, when
let's dance.
He says, "Let's dance." So, they're trying to create a theme here, I think. So it's like, I think he was trying to set up the fact that, okay, you were mourning your death of your brother.
Yep.
And, now you can step out.
Yep. Time to move on with life. But it's also interesting that it's an interesting analogy for a guy to use who also has a significant movement impairment. To be like, let's dance. Anyway, it's just sort of interesting.
Just add to the irony of it.
Victor is almost crazy to trust Oz at this point. He's forced to lay down in a grave with 2 murdered bodies. I think that would be the push for me. If I'm Victor and like that happens to me and I survive, it's like, I'm not killing you today. I'd be like, California, that seems nice. I think I'll catch a bus.
That part of it might have been how they. I thought it was interesting how they were giving us another side of Victor when the prostitute was asking about basically. I mean, they're really making a big, that's what led him to this moment, which is the fact that his family was killed in the aftermath of the.
That's what it certainly seems like.
So they're really trying to set that up and so, we
saw him looking off at the posters, the missing posters and stuff from the flood at one point. So, he's obviously like, yeah. So Oz is his family in a way.
Yeah.
Last week, I mentioned that the QR code that they showed led to an article that was dated in September. It was about Carmine Falcone's death. I'm thinking that was a show error, actually. These events, because we saw the date of the deaths of the various family members here, I think everything's happening in November. So I feel like I don't see a way to rectify this September date. I just feel like it may have been somebody meant to put November, but they wrote September in there, and so it became like an odd chronological error, perhaps. So yes, maybe slightly less effective an episode than episode 1, but still a very good show. I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying the character study, and we'll be back talking about episode 3. Thank you as always, Paul. Appreciate it, good sir.
No problem.
And we'll talk to everybody next time.
Bye.